Now, we want to go now to Capitol Hill to get the Democratic perspective on all these revelations. Congressman Brad Schneider is joining us live. Congressman, thank you very much for joining us here on The World right now. I want to get your thoughts to this bombshell, to these email exchanges that we've seen from Donald Trump Jr. How worried are you, if you're worried at all, about what you've seen today?
No, I think this email change, the news coming out, is a real concern. I think the fact that it is clear that the Russians tried to interfere in our elections, that all of our intelligence agencies have confirmed that. The president continues to question that. And now we're seeing evidence of emails between the president's son and people reporting to have connections with the Russian government is something we should be very concerned about, and why it's so important to have these investigations follow to their conclusion.
We heard Senator Tim Kaine in the last few minutes say it was potentially treason. Would you go that far?
Well, I think we have to let the investigations go to their extent and see where it leads us. Those are questions of law. I think we can all agree, regardless of your party, that what we're seeing is wrong. And the fact that the president's son, Donald Trump Jr., believed it was the right thing to do to meet with someone who was purportedly representing the Russian government, bringing evidence against his opponent, as we have seen in previous campaigns, that would be reasons to call the FBI. In this case, it was reasons to set up a meeting, and that's really concerning.
We heard from Donald Trump Jr. basically saying that nothing came out of that meeting. We had similar statements from Kellyanne Conway, who said yesterday in an interview here on CNN with our Chris Promo that nothing came out of that meeting. Does this change anything?
Well, I think we've seen from the administration, spokespeople for the administration, family members of the president, that what they say today could be easily contradicted tomorrow. And so the reason we have an independent investigator in Robert Mueller, the reason we need to have the investigations on the Senate and the House sides to understand everything that the Russians tried to do so it can't happen again. It's a threat to our democracy, the very foundations of our government. But we also need to understand what involvement, if any, the administration, the campaign, and the president may have had, and let these investigations go to their conclusion.
What does this mean for the President of the United States?
Well, that's where the investigation will lead us. This is obviously a very concerning moment. And again, it's not shouldn't be a partisan issue. Every American should be worried about the integrity of our elections, and any country trying to undermine that. The Russians clearly have done so. The president has refused to say whether he believes that or not in definitive terms. And now we're seeing at least evidence of the president's son reaching out to people saying they have connections with the Russian government to try to bolster the Trump campaign. This brings a lot of things into question. I think the investigation will ultimately, I hope, show us what the facts are.
Congress, is it possible that President Trump would not know about this meeting?
Well, that's what they're saying, and again, we're going to let the investigation prove that. It's hard to believe that a then candidate who was his own press secretary, was so involved with every aspect of his campaign, would not have been aware of a meeting that included his son, his son-in-law, and his then campaign manager. But that's what they're saying. Again, I'm concerned about the willingness of the Trump campaign, Donald Trump Jr., to sit down and meet with people who were saying they represented the Russian government. He should have called the FBI, not called the meeting room.
Well, in the last few hours, we have seen the government basically delay its August recess. How damaging are these emails and the impact it may have on the White House and indeed its ability to govern? Is anything being done?
Well, I think, there are so many things we need to address. We don't have a jobs bill. We don't have an infrastructure plan. We're not getting to the important issues of fixing the Affordable Care Act or addressing comprehensive tax reform, comprehensive immigration reform. And the news swirling around the president is unfortunately consuming all of the air, not just on TV, but in Washington. We need to really do the people's work and get down to business to address the issues we face, to grow our economy, to help working families, to make sure that we are protecting America's leadership role in the world. And unfortunately, with the news we're seeing and the response coming out of the administration, that's getting put to the back burner.
Congressman Brad Schneider, thank you very much for joining us here. It was great to get your perspective.
Issa, thank you. It was good talking with you.
Likewise. Well, that was a Democratic perspective, and President Trump's biggest supporters have always hit back hard at reports of questionable meetings and actions regarding Russia. But this is no report. It's directly from Trump Jr. himself. So how are Trump supporters responding now We'll get the reaction from Jeffrey Lord. That is later.